Stacey Ruth, welcome to the Post-Pandemic Summit. What an honor to have with us today.
Thank you. I am also honored to be here. I think this is a great project and I am so excited to be a part of it.
Well, let me introduce you, because if there's anybody who has been living under a rock and has not heard about you, let me just do a brief introduction. And while I do that introduction, I will strongly suggest that if you guys don't have a piece of paper and a pen near you, you rush over and get one, because you're about to get the secrets to building a very powerful presence for you all. So Stacey, you're an acclaimed marketer, you're an entrepreneur, you're an award-winning author with two multi-million-dollar agencies, two under your belt. And you had been acknowledged as one of the top 50 entrepreneurs in Atlanta and twice as one of the top 100 agencies by Experimental Marketer magazine. If you guys have ever done any marketing in your lifetime, you know how special and remarkable that is. Your business survived the fallout in 9/11 and the deep depression. And many of your competitors were forced to close during that time. But for you, it was the opportunity to really learn how brands like yours could rise above the circumstances and become unstoppable. And you did that through building a very deep emotional bond with your customers that goes beyond awareness, purchases of loyalty. We definitely want to learn more about that. Yes. And if those credentials were not enough, you are also a certified ROI professional licensed leadership coach. You're a minister and the author of the books True and Dare Inside and Out Marketing, and your latest book, Own Your Own Shift, the power, passion, and freedom to be unstoppable. So, wow, we are in the presence of an incredibly accomplished professional. And it really is a luxury, because it's not often that new entrepreneurs get the opportunity to have the ear of such an accomplished leader like yourself. So we are definitely grateful to have you among us. And I don't know if you know this, Stacey, I think I mentioned it to you before, but I work with a lot of educators. So imagine my surprise when I learned that both of your parents were teachers. Yes. That is so awesome. But yet you became an entrepreneur. So I don't know how they took that.
To their disappointment, yes.
I'm sure they were a bit heartbroken about that. But I wonder, what was it that you learned from your parents as teachers, as teachers, that led you to believe with this such passion that you could create and run a successful business?
Well, it's really interesting because my parents did want me to be a teacher. My mom actually has a master's degree in education. And they were teachers their entire adult life and retired as teachers. When I started my entrepreneurial journey, I guess is the way to put it, I did not connect the lessons that I had learned from them and how important those would be to me as an entrepreneur. But what I know now about that is that as teachers, oh my gosh, the patience you have to have. Sometimes my parents were not entirely patient, both with the process and administration, but it can be very difficult when you're dealing with a large classroom to have patience for the different levels and the different processes that the different students have within that environment. So important to have patience as an entrepreneur as well. You're going to have patience with clients and customers. You're going to have patience with the process itself. It's not like you snap your fingers and suddenly you have a multi-million-dollar agency. That took a decade or more to get there. So another one is organizational skills. Do not ever underestimate the ability to organize yourself, your team, your clients, and your processes. And as you grow, the organizational processes have to change with you. And so that's a really key thing. Let me see. I mean, teachers are leaders.
Yeah.
And if you're going to start your own business, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, leadership is key. And there is a big difference between leadership and management. Leadership is the visioning, leadership is the strategy, leadership is the approach and the motivation and the inspiration that teachers have to show up every day for their classes to create that, right? All of those are so important. But the primary one is the ability to communicate well.
That is so powerful, because you're basically outlining things that we may be doing in our regular life, but when
Yes.
we transition into entrepreneurship, it's hard
Mhm.
to pick the areas that we can leverage to build a business.
So much so. And there's so many more, but those are some of the top ones that I think make a huge difference.
And you kind of like lead us into a question that I had for you. You are clearly a marketing and branding and communication expert, and you hinted about the importance about communication.
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
when we're starting out, everything seems so overwhelming. So I wonder, given your expertise in the subject, if you can share with us through your
Mhm.
experience, what are some of the mistakes that early entrepreneurs make when we are trying to start to market ourselves,
Mhm.
and perhaps how
Yeah.
to avoid them?
Well, yeah. So there's the mistakes we make as entrepreneurs, period, and then there's the mistakes that we make as marketers. There's there's a lot of definitions of marketing. My definition of marketing is it is every aspect of the business.
Mm.
The reason that I say that is because it's through marketing that we communicate who we are, who we serve, what the experience of working with us is like. But we're just showing up like on a dating site and saying, here I am, and this is who I am, and is there a connection here, right? We talk about that emotional bond that we create.
Mhm.
So here's the mistake that most entrepreneurs make. They skip the foundational work that is so crucial to understanding who they are, and then go right into, and guilty as charged, have done this myself. We go, I should say, we go right into tactics.
Mhm.
What's my
Mhm.
brochure? What are my
Mhm.
differentiators? Am I going to be on this social media platform? What about this one? Am I going to be listing my features and my benefits? And what are my competitors doing? And should I be doing that? Do I have a website? And how about my business cards? And you can get so overwhelmed and consumed with all of these little vehicles of
Yeah.
the message that you miss the message.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
that's something that most of my startup clients who come to work with me, they come to me and say, can you help me with a website? Can you help me with my logo? And what we almost inevitably wind up doing first is looking at values, mission, vision, ideal customers. Who are we talking to and what are we saying?
It is so, I mean, when you walk us through it, right, it completely makes sense. It's like, yes, of course, that makes perfect sense. But you're absolutely right. When we're starting out, we're so consumed with the details. It's almost like a mechanism to protect us from like looking at the bigger picture. But as you said, without that, we have nothing. We have no
Yeah.
business.
It's really, I believe, now this is just my opinion, it's a lack of confidence. It's a lack
Mm,
of self-confidence initially. And so we float these things out there and say, how does this sound? What does this look like? Because we're not 100% confident in what we're saying or who we're saying it to at first, which, by the way, although I call that a mistake, it's okay to experiment.
yeah, it's a growing process. But it kind of like makes me think that that leads us into what you mentioned earlier about our leadership, right? And
Mhm.
how that could play into it. Um, so, what are some of the biggest challenges that we may? I keep asking you about the biggest challenges, but there's so many, and we only have a few minutes with you, so I want to make sure that we get everything out of you.
It's all good. That's what everybody wants to look at. How do I overcome them, right?
Yes, how do we, what are the biggest challenges learning how to lead a business?
Mm, yeah. Well, and not every entrepreneur is a good CEO. a
Mm,
good executive of their business.
mhm.
And a lot of us who have started our little solopreneur journeys
Yeah.
try to be all things to all people all the time. And that also is overwhelming. I think it's why most entrepreneurs can get exhausted, and why over 80% of small businesses tap out in the first 1 or 2 years, because we're not anticipating the overwhelm. We're not built for the long haul. We're going for the fast hit, and then it doesn't happen, and then we drop. So
Mhm.
that comes back to leadership, because leadership is about strategy.
Mhm.
Leadership is about vision. And we confuse, societally, we confuse leadership with management.
Mhm.
And they are not the same thing, although the same person can do both.
Mhm.
What's really important is to be clear. Am I managing? Am I creating the processes and putting the tactics into place to lead my team, or to create a process for my customers to grow? Or am I leading and creating vision and strategy and mission and motivation and inspiration for myself and my team and my customers?
Mhm. Mhm. And it makes me think a little bit about, what your introduction, right? Because it's a complete package, and you speak so often about creating unstoppable brands, and it makes me think the moment in time when we are connecting with each other, although clearly by your introduction we can experience moments sometime like this through our lives, but how do we build an unstoppable brand even in challenging circumstances?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. You know, I have a whole talk about this one, about the ability to be irresistible
Mhm.
regardless of our circumstances. So, regardless of what the competition is doing, regardless of what the market is doing, regardless of a COVID pandemic, regardless of what's happening, we can continue to go and grow. The way that we do that is by creating something. Now, I did not invent this, but a lot of people don't understand how to do this. And I have, and we can share links. I have an assessment. There are 7 brand affinity factors. Now, a brand affinity factor is the way that you uniquely create an emotional bond with your customers.
Mhm.
So your
Mhm.
brand has a personality. That's
Mhm.
that's your profile on that dating site I talked about earlier. And the brand affinity is the container of what the relationship looks like and feels like. So the way that you look at your brand affinity is, how are customers feeling when they engage with your brand? How do you make them feel when they engage with your brand? When you create that when you really play to that strength, and you really let them really drink in that experience of you and what it's like to work with you, then you've created an emotional stickiness that will forgive a lot of mistakes, a lot of stumbles, and a lot of circumstances that are going on around you, without uh, having to adapt and pivot and change everything that you do. You are able to keep going.
That makes me think about, you have seen a lot of new entrepreneurs coming through. So, and giving the advice you're giving us to build an unstoppable brand and thinking about all these elements, I wonder what would be the most important advice that you could share for an entrepreneur like everybody listening in here that is just starting out?
Well, oh my goodness, there's so many things. I think there's a universal, well, almost universal, a universal myth
Mhm.
that is important to recognize as a myth, and to really check in with yourself, because a lot of folks are bailing right now out of the organizations, the larger organizations that they're in, and they're deciding to start something new.
Mhm.
Your audience is leaving the educational field. A lot of them are. I
Mhm.
don't know that everyone is, but a lot of them are leaving the educational field to start something new. I had several friends who are doing that.
Mhm.
Okay. Are you prepared for the long haul? Are you doing this out of passion, out of a sense of reacting to something else? or are you leaning in to something that you're willing to commit to for a year, 2 years, 3 years? How long will it take you to create that momentum? Now you can go get angel investing, depending on what you're doing. You can do a crowdfunding, you can do a lot of things to get you some revenue to keep you going, but you have to keep it going in order to build it. There is very rarely an overnight success. I was not an overnight success. Most overnight successes take 10 to 15 years minimum to be an overnight success. So don't kid yourself. It's going to take commitment and a long haul strategy.
That is so interesting because we often think about that immediate, right? I'm going to leave my job now, and then in 6 months, I'm going to be financially independent. And the
Guilty as
situation is,
charged.
yes.
Been there,
yes.
done that. No.
So many of us take that road.
You
And
can
sadly,
show up on Shark Tank, and I know some people who've been on Shark Tank, and it helps, but that's such a small percentage. Don't
yes.
count on that.
Yes. So it really speaks about really knowing ourselves and what is it that we want to go through it. And that plays exactly directly about your incredible new book that you just released recently. Well, not, it is, I think that if anybody, the link is below this video, but in your book, you on your shift, you outline 12 steps for personal transformation, and you tell us how to navigate that process with success. And I have been thinking a lot about your book, and I wonder if those 12 steps could be applicable to starting your own business.
Absolutely, they are. I mean, it's a book about personal transformation, and it's about a universal process of making large scale or difficult shifts in our life, someplace where we might feel like we're stuck, or, oh my gosh, this is so important to me, right? So those are the big ones. We make those same shifts all the time. They're just not conscious because it's not a big deal. So buying a home, getting married, well, I won't say those aren't big deal, but some people struggle with it, other people don't. And if you don't struggle with it, you don't think about it. But the stages of being sick and tired. I mean, what entrepreneur hasn't started a business out of being sick and tired of doing something else?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
That's where we typically start to make change. I just am sick and tired of being where I am right now, and it's time for me to move, right? And then you are not alone is the second stage. And a lot of folks think that they have to reinvent the wheel, or that they have to prove something. And it's important to get a mentor or a guide, perhaps a tribe, maybe someone who is an expert in the field, you or I, perhaps, to help us along the way. And I wish that I had had some of that when I started. I think I would have grown faster that way. And without going into a lot of these different stages, they include surrendering to the process, trusting your own inner wisdom, getting clarity about where you want to go and what you want to do, rather than rushing pell-mell into the fray, and really recognizing that you need to celebrate the wins. You don't just hop from goal to goal to goal without stopping to say, I made that, I did that, because it's demoralizing if we don't. So there are a lot of rich contexts that anyone could read that book about personal transformation. And I think it would be extremely helpful if they're just starting out.
I mean, for me, I have loved your book. It is so powerful, so powerful. So I cannot thank you enough for writing it. And so as we wrap up our time together today, we can find the link to your book, as I said, below this video, and you very generously offer to share your test with you, which will include that link in here so people can connect as well. What other ways can we also stay connected with you?
Oh, well, you can find me all over social media. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I would absolutely invite your audience to find my Facebook group, Unstoppable Leader. For well, this one, that group is for women leaders. And I absolutely invite folks to go to either, I have two businesses right now. So I have one about branding and one about leadership coaching. Check out either one of those sites, and I know you'll drop those links below. And there are all kinds of fun tools and workbooks to really dig into some of these ideas, including, finding your target audience and determining your values. Those kinds of activities I'm always happy to give someone a little bit of direction or guidance so that they can really just absolutely rock a new business.
I cannot thank you enough for your generosity. Like I said in the introduction, it is very rare that a new entrepreneur gets an audience with somebody of your caliber. So we are forever grateful for all the gifts that you have shared with us today, and even more, inviting us to your Facebook and finding even more goodies in your website, and more importantly, if you guys have not gotten her book, you better get it, because you will propel your success 10 times forward just by getting the book and reading it.
Oh, thank you so much.
Stacey Ruth, what an honor to have you with us. Thank you again for your generosity and your time today.
It's been a pleasure.